Liverpool and Manchester United are both up for sale. Two of the biggest English football clubs with rich histories both domestically and in Europe. These two clubs aren't put up for sale very often. So we thought we'd take this opportunity, with both clubs being up for sale, to look at the risks and rewards from a financial perspective of owning a football club. Firstly, let's look at the risks, which may be clear to some people, but maybe not to others. And the first risk that we want to highlight is the operating costs of a club. These will fall on the owner and will be your responsibility to underwrite any costs that translate into losses. If we look at this from a P&L perspective, the costs are primarily driven by wages and amortization. And these are obviously player-related costs, with a monthly outgoing to pay the net salaries and the following month paying HMRC in the UK at least for the taxes withheld and due on those salaries. On top of the wages, you'll have to service any transfer fees, which ultimately will be your call to enter into any contracts relating to the acquisition and the sale of player registrations. But again, this will be a substantial cash drain. And the difficulty from the inside of running a football club is managing the high operating costs that will be static throughout the year, on top of the lumpy transfer fees which are likely to exist in summer, around August, potentially in September, and potentially even in January with the January transfer window. So when it comes to the start of the season, there will be a large cash requirement, as there will be towards the middle of the season and towards the end. So how could you fill that gap? Football clubs are relying more and more on broadcasting or TV money. The way that clubs can be more successful in generating more broadcasting revenue is to be successful on the pitch. The overall size of the prize isn't in the control of the club. It's up to the central bodies such as the Premier League or UEFA to try to sell their broadcasting rights to the highest bidder. That then is divided up using various distribution mechanisms to the various clubs competing in those relevant competitions. But there is an over-reliance on broadcasting revenue. And if that bubble were to burst, it would reduce the revenue and the income streams of each club. Clubs are already planning and have committed cash on the basis of these broadcasting deals. Clubs will be able to predict where they will finish in the league with a degree of certainty and attempt to budget where they will finish when it comes to knockout competitions. Heavily linked to that distribution mechanism is an unequal distribution of wealth depending on which league you sit in. The Premier League is known as one of the most competitive leagues in the world, and that's because there's a relative equal distribution between the highest and lowest placed club. But in some leagues around the world, that distribution of wealth is primarily shifted towards the more successful clubs. Even in the Premier League, there is obviously weight towards the more successful clubs, but the ratio is much lower from top to bottom, as it would be in other leagues. And that allows for the Premier League to be more successful. And this may well explain the attraction of foreign investment into the Premier League, and may also explain to a certain extent why clubs are prepared to gamble to get from the Championship to the Premier League. But if we look at the Premier League as the pinnacle of football, there is obviously a distribution of wealth issue when it comes to that league versus the rest in England. So if you were to acquire a Premier League club that was relegated into the Championship or other divisions in the EFL, then you would suffer from an unequal distribution of wealth. Club owners may come up with innovative ways to be able to close that gap, but they would be limited with certain aspects of revenue generation. Match day, for example. This will be limited to the capacity of the stadium and the prices that you're willing to charge your fans. If you charge them too much, then they may not come to the game and your match day revenues may suffer. Commercial income is primarily sponsorship income. Now, this is up to your negotiation skills. And some new owners in the Premier League are looking to push the boundaries when it comes to commercial income, suggesting events such like an all-star game, or potentially even having additional games or some of the Premier League games played in overseas jurisdictions, all in an attempt to potentially create more commercial revenue for their club. Another significant risk when it comes to financial impact is linked back to the players. What if your players become injured and are unable to play? First of all, there's a consideration from an accounting perspective. If there is a career-ending injury, there could be a charge to the profit and loss. This could be mitigated with an insurance policy, but that's likely to be very expensive. Again, there could be a financial exposure with a knock-on impact to on-pitch performance if players are unavailable for selection. This may lead to the club performing poorly on the pitch and could pose a relegation threat, which could compound that financial impact. But what about the rewards? If you can get the operating model right, if you can get a club from the Championship to the Premier League, or if you can look to have a vision to exit the club given a sensible purchase price, then there could be significant value that could be generated from running and operating a club in an efficient way. If we look at Liverpool and Manchester United with sales values of approximately 3 or even up to £5 billion, given the acquisition costs of around about 300 million, give or take the debt that's repayable on the Manchester United side, then that's a substantial return. And if you're willing to invest for the long term using a private equity model that potentially allows for losses or a relatively break-even model to be performed with reinvestment in the squad and the infrastructure, or potentially not if you look at Manchester United, then there could be a substantial cash prize at the end if your purchase price was sensible. But will this growth continue? And could that potential reward become a risk if someone is purchasing at £5 billion? What are your thoughts on the financial risks and rewards of running a football club? Is it worth it? Is the potential upside going to outweigh the potential risks? Have I missed any that you'd like to discuss? Feel free to comment below. If you like the video, hit like, subscribe and hit the bell for notification. My name's Neil Wood and I'm a football finance professional.